One of the great mysteries of the coronavirus story is the reason or the set of reasons why New York is suffering, but California is doing so well comparatively. Remember, California's first confirmed case was all the way back on January 26th. It was a traveler from Wuhan who was put in isolation in Orange County. New York's first confirmed case wasn't until 5 weeks later on March 1st. Roughly speaking, California and New York are in a similar category of states. Geographically large coastal places with major urban centers and suburbia sprawling as far as the eye can see, and statewide, their population densities are comparable. Now, New York City's population density is 2 or 3 times that of Los Angeles or San Francisco, granted. But the death rates are not on the scale of that difference. As of Tuesday morning, New York's deaths per million population aren't 2 or 3 times greater than California's. They're 27 times greater. Broadly speaking, these cities and states occupy a similar space in the American landscape. So how is it that the place that saw the virus so much earlier is doing 27 times better than the place that didn't see the virus until 5 weeks after the fact? All I see from news reporting is a drone of uncritical consensus. California's lockdowns have flattened the curve. More specifically, that California's early lockdowns have flattened the curve. An Atlantic piece this week fawns over San Francisco Mayor London Breed. She took heat, but it was her early and aggressive moves that contained the outbreak and made the city by the Bay a national model for fighting the pandemic. The San Jose Mercury News asks if other regions acted too slowly to match the Bay Area and the Golden State's successful stay-at-home orders. The Los Angeles Times says it was California's quick action to shut everything down that helped cement the progress, which incidentally sounds like a great motto for California overall: cement the progress. There's no questioning it, and there's no going back. And look, I'm not saying this is absurd thinking. It generally stands to reason that these things could be true, but given the timeline of events, I still have my questions. The Bay Area is praised among these media circles for being the first metro area in the country to issue a shelter-in-place order effective the evening of March 16th. The state of California followed with the same order effective 3 days later on the evening of the 19th, and New York Governor Andrew Cuomo issued a statewide order for all of New York on March 22nd. Was it really 2 or 3 days that explains the massive difference in outcome? California just so happened to issue a government order on the exact right day, and New York just missed the window by that much? Gosh darn it, that sounds silly to me, but that is the case the papers are making. Yes, even a few days difference means those infected infect more people, who in turn infect more people, according to the epidemiology professor cited in the Mercury News. A biostatistician cited by the LA Times says the same, quote, "Just putting those controls in place a single day earlier makes a huge difference in growth rates. And 2 days earlier, an even bigger difference." Okay, fine, you are the experts, but my problem with these takes is they're based on theory, not observation and data. Sure, we can do a simple analysis that says California shut down first and California's doing better. Therefore, shutting down first is the reason California's doing better. Never mind the practically infinite list of other plausible variables to explain the different outcomes that we're just not going to consider. That's easy to do if the goal is justifying a policy rather than getting at the truth of the matter. And we have plenty of data to work with now. We're not sitting where we were a month ago, trying to predict the unknown future where the consequences for being wrong are potential 7-figure casualties. On Monday, the governors of California and New York each said they've agreed to follow the data. They've agreed to let science and data, not politics, determine when and how to ease back into some state of normal. Well, hey, great. That sounds like a solid philosophy, but even that approach is one step ahead. Instead of asking when it will be effective to change the status quo, we should be asking if the status quo was even effective. We have data to analyze. We know when states shut down, and we know their death rates, at least according to how they're measured. But don't worry, I'm not going to get back into that. If data and science are so important, why isn't anybody verifying the narrative to confirm or reject the idea that the speed with which these lockdowns were implemented or the duration of their effect has any meaningful relationship with the deaths observed across the country. Because after all, it's not just California and New York we can use to evaluate these claims. We have 95% of the country's population under these stay-at-home orders, statewide in 42 states. How does the spread of the virus compare when considering what states took what action when? But of course, answering that question would be a monumental task of journalistic investigation and analysis far beyond the capabilities or even the willingness of this country's corporate press. That would take all of the energy and all of the incredible resources of a guy sitting at his desk, bored with his quarantine time. And I don't say that to dismiss this guy. I think he put together some awesome work. Let's Visualize State-by-State Shutdown Effectiveness on COVID-19 is the piece by Yinan Weiss, sorry for any mispronunciation, self-published over on Medium. And I don't know anything about the guy other than he's been doing his own analysis and posting it. And according to his Twitter, he's an entrepreneur with degrees from Harvard Business and UC Berkeley. But the great thing about his work is you don't have to take it at face value. He shares all of his data and all of his calculations, so you can go check it all out for yourself. The way he constructs his analysis of this question is great, and made me realize the flaws in the way I was thinking about it. It's not precise enough to say that California shut down a few days before New York, because California and New York were at different stages of infection. Instead, we should ask when each state shut down relative to a certain infection benchmark. Our author chooses the point at which people started dying in that state, a low death rate of 0.5 deaths per million population. The author takes each state's shutdown date relative to that point in time and plots it with that state's IHME projected death rate per million as of Sunday morning. This is the same model that the White House often cites that formerly predicted up to 240,000 US deaths by August and is now predicting some 60,000. And that's a choice I'm not thrilled about. I'd rather see observed deaths than projected deaths, but it's still a good proxy for how each state stacks up against the others in terms of death rate. And that's what's really important here. Is a state in better or worse shape than the others, and to what degree? And when you plot that out, there is absolutely no relationship to speak of. The line of best fit is flat, and it doesn't even show a weak relationship between earlier shutdown times and decreased death rates. Zero statistical significance to explain a line that doesn't even show the trend we're all being told is obviously true. Well, okay, but that's one chart comparing all states without controlling for any of the variability across those states, like, crucially, population. Why would we compare Wyoming to California? Fine, let's not. Our author next limits the analysis to only the 15 most populous states. In this case, the relationship is still statistically non-existent, but if anything, the trend line shows the reverse, that states that were later to the shutdowns are projected for lower deaths per million. The only way our author produces a trend line anything close to what we're being told is obviously true is if he adjusts the clock by changing the time benchmark to the state reaching 5 deaths per million and measuring when each state shut down relative to that point instead. Then the same analysis produces something resembling a correlation between earlier shutdowns and lower death rates. But it's still an extremely weak relationship. As our author notes, shutdown time is likely not a significant explainer for why some states are in worse shape than others. There must be much more important forces in play. And so our author concludes it is reasonable to challenge the conventional wisdom that shutdowns are the leading or even meaningful contributor to saving lives when compared to other measures, such as washing hands, canceling large events, measuring one's temperature, and staying at home when exposed to somebody who is sick. And let's be appropriately careful with that conclusion. Does it mean that lockdowns did nothing? No, we don't have a counterfactual to compare to where these states didn't lock down and instead adopted less restrictive measures or didn't lock down at all. And remember, this analysis is focusing on whether speed of lockdown affects death rates, not just lockdowns generally. So just like the doctors from the last video, I don't present you this information as the certified truth that you should accept uncritically. I present it as a good piece of analysis that runs counter to the dominant media narrative, a good piece of analysis we should be considering. And as I said, have a look at the guy's open book of data and calculations for yourself. And yes, also consider what his critics are saying. Britt Hume shared this analysis on Twitter on Monday, and the responses are full of critical points. This guy's analysis is too simple. This guy's analysis doesn't factor population density. In fact, there are tons of variables that require way more effort than this guy puts forth. Well, it's got more effort than a tweet, that's for sure. But yes, let's scrutinize. Because yes, I welcome the opposition case. I welcome the conclusive, data-driven analysis that says early and sustained shutdowns strongly correlate with better public health outcomes. In fact, I don't just welcome that analysis, I think we are owed that analysis as a society because we haven't made this bargain for free. It wasn't just an easy safety first calculation. It's not safety first when 17 million Americans and counting are out of work, and the food for the mouths they feed suddenly becomes a much less safe bet. It's not safety first when people are delaying preventative care and checkups that would otherwise catch health conditions that may be significantly worse by the time they get evaluated later. It's not safety first when phone lines at suicide prevention call centers are surging with calls of anxiety and despair. We can't scrutinize the analysis if they don't show us the analysis. If it's so obviously true that early and sustained shutdowns have kept us all safer, and they've been a great deal in exchange for the various historic disasters that worsen by the day, show us the numbers. If this guy's analysis is so simple and so silly, show us the properly sophisticated analysis that proves him wrong. And don't worry, we'll wait. We got nothing but time. By state order. Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel. Always appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below, and especially over on Twitter. That is at ML Christiansen. You're always welcome to coming out and chat in my live streams. Those are linked down in the description. Looking forward to it. Goodbye.